So I'm here on behalf of the team for Idea 184, Consultation Data Hub. I think most of our team is here as well. And yeah, so you know why we're here. We're talking about a consultation data hub, talking about listening to Canadians, and this is the DC Data Challenge, but you know that. So I can forward my thing. So this is our presentation today. So current status, I mean, this is about public engagement, and we do a lot of public engagement. We did a little bit of digging, and PCO has a list of 865 significant engagements, but that's by no means all of them. Lots of it's legislated. We looked for spending money. 25 million on public engagement and opinion research, external contracts. That does not include all the FTEs and all the comms people and all the shops that are internal. A lot of the data that we collect, so we go out and we talk to Canadians, we talk to stakeholders, we collect data. That tends to be trapped in silos. And, there's some stats there about that. And there's also tons of surveys that are done. And that's not even getting into, cabinet committees and expert panels that you might consider to be engagement. So lots of stuff out there, all scattered. Maybe there's value. We talk about who's involved. There's sort of organizations, and then public servants themselves across various disciplines, and then external people, stakeholders, academics, journalists, Indigenous groups, and just interested individuals. I mean, I'm kind of coming at this, my experience being with the open government and the National Action Plan. So that's kind of my perspective, but it's much broader than that because it includes things like regulation and, service design and the rest of it. When we talk about what is engagement data, lots of different sources, both qualitative and quantitative. You might consider primary and secondary sources of data as listed here. So the basic problem, consultations, time-consuming, expensive. They must represent significant value. It's data locked in silos. And at the same time, government needs to be more responsive. Like our environment is changing. We need our socioeconomic environment's changing, the geopolitical situation, the health situation, all of that. We need to move fast. But the reality is we don't know what we've heard as an enterprise. So we've introducing this character here, Chantel, who's our sort of analyst, and if she's got to deal with a problem, it's like, what? So what if, this is our sort of our hypothesis, what if we could bring together the data, the engagement results in particular, but even also, the stakeholder groups, some kind of common understanding of who we're talking to, and the when and where, the scheduling. Do it with some standardization, make it shareable across the GC. And one of the things that would happen there is we'd have big data, right? So all these smaller consultations that might have 30 or 10,000 responses, you pool them, and now we've got big data. And big data means you can use AI. Like artificial intelligence doesn't really work unless you have big data. Anyway, so Chantel is getting excited because now, right, if she's on a journey, so this is one use case, there will be others. She's a policy analyst. She's working on the latest urgent priority file. She needs to get some data to help her understand the real issues. She'd love to go out and do engagement, but she doesn't have time. Brief is due next week. So she queries this thing called the Consultation Hub. She discovers some previous engagements that are kind of related, some public perception surveys. She can see what questions we've already asked people and see the answers. And, there's an AI behind this, sort of a chat GPT thing that mines everything we've heard. So she can ask a question and get a reasonable answer. That intelligence leads to some deeper insights that she can include in her brief to decision makers. And as a result of that insightful brief, decisions are announced that are not only good decisions, but they demonstrate the government's listening, improving our service and building trust in the public service. So the value prop, right? Faster knowledge acquisition, knowing what we know, some big data intelligence, better informed decisions, some potential for reduction in spending on duplicative engagements and consultation fatigue. I say potential, not sort of promising that. We'll have to see. And open government, like it totally fits in with the whole open government transparency and public trust space. There are challenges. The data sets for prototyping, we did take a bit of a look, and there's not a lot on the open government portal that we could find. There is some. So privacy and intellectual property considerations are also huge, which really boils down to consent. And I don't think it's insurmountable. It's just the mechanics of doing it consistently. Metadata quality, as always, whenever you're talking data, and herding the cats is probably the big one. And if you guys haven't seen this, this is that image. If you click on it, it'll take you to a link of the herding the cats commercial, which some of you may be aware of. And whenever we're trying to do anything government-wide, that's what it is, right? Because departments are individual cats that go their own way. The background to this slide, by the way, was a draft sort of common stakeholder map that we worked on years ago with a bunch of public engagement folks just to see if we could do it. So planning, the short term, if we move ahead from this, what do we want to do next? Build a prototype. We don't have a prototype today. We'd have to assemble the available data. We've sort of taken a first step at that, experiment with some approaches. I've been chatting with a vendor called Snowflake that claims they can do this type of thing in like 15 minutes. So maybe we throw some open data sets at them and see what they can do. Explore the use cases in more depth, create an MVP, minimum viable products, at least an interface. At the same time, exploring some of the further policy implications in depth, testing some of our technology assumptions, maybe even testing that MVP with some users, and coming up with a bit of a proposal for ongoing operations. In terms of sort of the longer term, so it's like, okay, let's implement it, Tom and team. We think that to make this real, we'd have to spend a lot of time talking to the key stakeholders, which are internal. Convene them, do workshops, herd the cats, as it were, get everybody together on the same page. Also, while exploring the use of AI in a number of ways, helping to normalize those data sources, categorize them, as well as ultimately the answering the questions, which was in our journey. And, a bit of a budget and a plan for ongoing operations. What would it take to do this on an ongoing basis? Some of the thoughts we have about the levers we could pull. Potentially there could be a directive on consultation that, told folks this is the way they need to do it, as in the data. Also, there's a standing offer on engagement platforms. Perhaps there could be a clause in the contract that says, the data must, I hear you, I'm almost done. That, ensures that A, we have the ownership of the data, and secondly, that it's in some kind of, if not common format, at least interoperable. And, all of this might happen under the auspices of an open data initiative, or at least be related to that. That's it. So I'll stop there, and we got time for questions.
Thanks, Tom. And of course, team. All right, so who would like to go first?
I'll kick it off.
Go ahead, Jason. You were last. Second time, last time around.
So hi everybody, my name is Jason Reed. I'm the CIO over at NRCan. A great presentation. I had a couple of questions, and so the first was just confirmation that we're doing public opinion research. So anything it's external facing. So we wouldn't be looking at data sets for internal polling, around subjects like return to the workplace. So that was my first question. The second question is with regards to the cost of developing a data hub and sort of keeping this alive over time. And so some of the experiences that I've seen talking to other CIOs around the GC is that there's definitely needs for data hub. They're great solutions, but they are costly. I mean, there's always new requirements. There's always new functionality that needs to be built out. Have you given any thoughts to that? And are you looking at all at Stats Canada's data as a service? Have you engaged them to see if this is something that they would house on your behalf?
Excuse me. So we haven't engaged with them on this. Frankly, we didn't have a lot of time. We're all busy with day jobs. But I can say from previous experience with results and delivery unit at PCO, where we attempted to create a data hub to try and deal with COVID data, and as well had fairly close connections with StatsCan, I suppose. So yes, I think StatsCan And I think I might have left them off the list of key stakeholders. And then last night I realized that they should be on the list because not only do they have the expertise in dealing with large amounts of data, right? They also have kind of the platform and this idea of data as a service. So I would imagine that in the next phase, yes, we would be talking to them in much, how do you flesh this out? How do we make this real? Anybody on the team have another answer to that question? Audrey?
Hi, I'll jump in. Not an added, not a different one, but an added element. I would want to look at leveraging existing systems in place. So whether it's a federated data platform, wouldn't want to create something like a gigantic data lake or data ocean or creating a whole new system when we can actually tap into existing systems and be able to have interoperability and connectivity in those spaces. Thank you.
And just quickly, confirmation with regards to external consultations only and not internal to the department.
Yeah, certainly for the purposes of the prototype, we would only be dealing with what we could find that was already open, right? I don't think we would, we certainly wouldn't be trying to get into protected B space. Although ultimately you might need a mechanism for dealing with that, but not in the prototype.
Yeah, like thank you very much for this presentation. Very, very interesting. You've mentioned 865 PCO track significant engagement, and then also that one of your key challenges is there's not a lot of data sets in open government, I guess, related to that. My question is, do you know where departments keep the results of their engagement or consultation with the external stakeholder, what format they're in, and then how much of an effort is that going to be, like for the team to do QA or to massage the data into the data hub? Because to put it in the data hub is one thing, but as you know, it has to be found as well after. So, and then have you determined number of engagement that already exists, like consultation engagement, that you will be using to start with so that you can show results and value from the get-go, right away to either to Canadians or to government programs? Thank you.
So a preliminary scan of the Open Data Portal, we found, I think, 7 data sets that you could call public engagement clearly. We also found a whole bunch of surveys, some of which would be relevant and others not so much. Like the salmon stock in BC, for instance, is an important number, but it's not really necessarily public engagement. So some further work would be required there just to sort of collect that first set of data sets that we would play with. The alignment of those data sets is obviously going to be a huge challenge. When you say where are they currently stored? Well, of those 800 odd engagements that PCO tracks, about 100 of them have public reports, which we could go look at. My guess is most of those public reports are going to be what we heard reports without actual data, but it would give us a lead to investigate to see if we could find the data. The data itself, I'm going to bet, is in spreadsheets, in document management systems, in various programs around the system, right? Some of it may even lie in platforms, like Bang the Table being a fairly common platform that's used these days. But probably CSV files on analysts' desks, to be honest. So I don't think it's realistic to say we're going to pull it all together in short term, right? But it is something that I think collectively, if we sort of started to work together, then it could be something that grew over time fairly organically. And there might be, the first step would be just see how challenging it is to align these. My understanding from my previous experience, there was work actually done by Open North, a contractor at one point, where they did try and come up with a standard schema for engagement, and they made some pretty good progress in my mind. Everything we do has a context, there's some kind of a question, and there are responses to that question. And then there's unsolicited feedback, which needs to be categorized. one of the things I think we could explore is if and how we might use machine learning to do some of that, but that's not going to be simple. We're going to have to do a whole bunch of manual stuff to figure it out.
Thank you.
Hi, so Derek Dobson at Microsoft. Thanks again for a fantastic presentation, really interesting. I'm struck with a couple of practicalities of moving a project forward. I really liked your persona, Chantal, the policy analyst, and I get the fact that that's actually a horizontal sort of strata of persona across every government department, so policy analyst in that piece. Do you have a view who customer zero would be, or the stakeholder who would help you to drive all of this together and help you to own the project and move it forward?
So customer, like the owner of the project?
Yeah, so who would be the primary owner that would help give you the impetus to get this moving and going forward, like as a customer or a stakeholder? Internal customer, I don't mean, I'm using it.
Well, I mean, yeah, if we look at the, I have a chart here I'm looking at off the side, but the departments that do these engagements that were on this list we found, Health Canada does the most, 250. So we might, initially we'd want to talk to some of those organizations that do the most engagement. In terms of sort of a natural central owner for these things, that's probably going to be a bit tricky. Like all good things where there's no explicit mandate, where does it live? The open data portal is kind of a natural place to explore and think about. Also considering that Treasury Board, in so much as that there is policy on consultation, it kind of falls under the comms policy, which is a TBS thing. Another big player is going to be PCO, because they're always interested in this, and they're also the interface to the political level, indirectly through PMO. So, I'm not sure, to be honest, but those are my initial thoughts. Audrey has something smarter to say.
No, I'll also encourage any of my other teammates to jump in as well. One of those pieces, thank you again for that question. I agree with you. It will be challenging to find a homeowner or a product owner for those pieces, but really part of the pitch is about presenting the benefits for the hub to be in existence, of being able to have a data catalog where folks would know exactly what types of consultations are out there and how it can actually result in cost savings down the road in terms of reducing the number of surveys that might need to be redone because we already have some of that data, and or actually being able to create a more tailored future surveys because we have this repository of consultations that have already been able to be pulled together and consulted in advance before information and other surveys are put out. So really it would be about a pitch that then goes out to a number of the different departments that Tom has actually already listed, and being able to have somebody put their hand up. Thank you.
Maybe it's a coalition, right? 5 or 6 departments that see it makes sense, get together and we sign MOUs, and that budget's like 3 to 5 people on an ongoing basis to make this thing happen. Maybe. First guess.
Wes?
So Wesley Young, Statistics Canada. Thanks for the presentation. I think it's a really good idea, but to be honest, I have some concerns. In particular, you put up a slide with your challenges, okay? And those are the exact challenges I was thinking about. Herding the cats is number one. You're talking about getting a coalition and stuff. You got to get some buy-in. We have been involved in trying to get data from different departments across government, and it's like pulling teeth. Nobody wants to share that data. Okay, so if you can get that's a big. So I don't want to be negative. I just want to make sure that you don't underestimate sort of these challenges. The other challenge too is from a data point of view, and you talk about standardization. I'm thinking data stewardship principles, which is the first one in my mind is standardization. Even if you had access to the data, okay, what I worry about is one department is going to say, define a consultation this way. A different department will define consultation differently. So you think you've got the same word, consultation, but you've got 15 different things going on. So that's another thing that, again, is going to be really, really important if you want to move this forward. Because if you don't, okay, your data quality is going to be kind of really muddy. And then your results, once you come out of this, you put everything together, you get some interesting numbers or whatever you want to pull out of it. Someone's going to say, that doesn't make sense. So, it's like building a house. well, I guess if you're down south, but in Canada, you got to build that basement. You got to put that foundation in. If you don't put the foundation in, and I'm talking about standards, metadata quality, data quality, quality assurance, your house is probably going to fall down after a couple freeze cycles. So just want to, like I said, I don't want to be negative, okay? I think it's really good. If it works, it's going to be really, really useful, but don't underestimate some of these challenges.
Oh, no question. Most of my career in the public service, which is now sitting around 15 years, has been banging my head against the Westminster system and trying to get that coalition together. So I certainly don't underestimate it. Adam, he has the solution.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think I've heard from the past two members here, kind of a similar concern around like who's going to be the focus point here, and I think that is kind of the name of the game, and that's what I think a lot of people are trying to draw out here. I've been in a bunch of IT projects, and for sure, it's very helpful to do a scan of the possible friction points that different divisions are having, right? These data owners, and finding the one who's having the most friction points that can be solved by a potential solution from here. And going into consultation with them to understand what their data looks like, what their friction points are. And by friction, I mean how they're trying to do their work right now with the current state of their data, why it's not working well. From there, we can build a solution that's more tailored to them, while also using more research to try to understand the broad scope, so that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot by building something only for them. Right? I think like that's the way to address these risks. These still doesn't get rid of all the risks that are being described, but probably the best way of mitigating these risks is to find someone who's having the most friction and pain points right now, given their current processes with the data as it stands, and going to them and trying to understand what that is and offering the solution as something that can help them. Hopefully they'll play
That
nice.
sounds like a great plan. Identify the need, right?
Thanks. Elise?
Yes, Elise Legendre, Chief Data Officer at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. I really like the vision, and I really like what this could bring to the table for analysts like Chantal and others in all the departments. Just a clarification question here. I've heard two things. I've heard the qualitative aspect of the consultation and maybe having a tool to help with that aspect. And then the other one is more about that quantitative aspect of public opinion response. And I wanted to know which ones you were more interested in. And I would just like to reemphasize the coalition and maybe starting small with one department and having buy-in, and even just herding the cats within a department is a challenge in and of itself, right?
Yeah. I mean, that just within a department, precisely. Sorry, the point of clarification was qualitative versus quantitative. I don't think we haven't really discussed that as a team. I mean, my bias is I'm fascinated by qualitative data, but the quantitative is kind of easier to deal with. So it's yeah, at this point, I think it would be something that we would explore as part of the next phase. But generally speaking, at least in my mind, I would not want to do one at the exclusion of the other, because I think they're both, there's things that qualitative data reveal that, quantitative never will. They're just harder to see.
If I may just add a little bit to that, I think there's also some opportunity for innovative approaches in the way we use and we manage our qualitative data using, recognition and AI. So, sorry, Adam, I jumped in and you were gonna speak.
No, it's okay. I'm kind of sensing that one of the things you're talking about when you're talking about qualitative versus quantitative data is, how would you go about probing that qualitative data, right, and really getting insights out of there? And I think that's where the natural language processing or machine learning is being offered up as a potential solution. Obviously, it's very like progressive and hard to implement in any workspace, but that is kind of a solution that could help an analyst or someone sit at a certain application and actually get those insights and understand what has been done in terms of the qualitative data. And so there's many things to talk about more about what that can look like, but I'll stop here.
Yeah, and on that front, so when I was with the Open Government Unit, our engagements generated on the order of, a couple of thousand qualitative comments, and we did a survey that generated 10,000 comments. And we did do 2 experiments, bringing in some AI vendors to see whether we could use artificial intelligence to to classify those comments. And the answer was sort of a qualified yes, sort of, mostly because the data sets weren't big enough. You know, a data set of 2,000 is just not enough to train an AI, a machine on. So that's, you know, part of the, if we can build a big enough critical mass of relatively consistent or at least understandable consultation data, then I think it opens up that possibility.
Okay. And so there's no further questions. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your excellent answers to the questions posed today. Another round of applause, I guess.